Namaste. Today we are studying more about astral plane of consciousness. But before we proceed to the astral plane of consciousness study, let us first discuss what all we have already studied before this, so that if any of you is joining this class for the first time, they should know what all we have already studied. So the first thing that we have discussed is what is a soul. Then we have discussed what is a third eye, what happens when the third eye opens. We have studied 4 divisions of creation, how the entire creation is divided beyond the physical level of creation in which we are living. And we have discussed basic planes of consciousness beyond the astral plane of consciousness. So if any of you have not gone through those videos on the channel, you can go through the videos and study from that. So today we are going to discuss more on the astral plane, how the astral plane is and how all we experience it. So that is what we're going to study. Now as we start, I'm assuming that you have already listened to the video where we talked about the third eye. The title of the video is How to Astral Travel, I guess. That's the title of the video. I'll link it in the description below as video 1. So I'm assuming that you already have that knowledge and we are studying from there. Now, as we discussed that the third eye is the eye of the soul, the seat of the soul, which helps us perceive the world beyond what the 2 eyes can see. It helps us see that part of the universe that is not physical, that is not visible to the 2 eyes. So when we talk about the astral plane of consciousness, which is the first subtle plane of consciousness after this physical creation where we are living in. This plane of consciousness is considered more subtle by those who have experienced this plane of consciousness. Now, many people, they consider the astral plane of consciousness as the final stage. Many techniques that are practiced in the world, they are only able to take a soul only up to the astral plane of consciousness. And this includes most of the yogas that are mentioned, that are taught by Patanjali, and other techniques as well. For example, the people who practice the concept of Alakh Niranjan, that is the supreme being, formless awareness, they consider Sat Chit Anand, they call that stage, and they consider that stage as the final stage of consciousness. Now, they consider it the final stage because to them that is the 4th and the final stage of consciousness after sound sleep, then sleep stage of consciousness, and then waking stage of consciousness, in which we already are in the physical world. So to them, after the waking stage comes the astral stage of consciousness. So this 4th stage of consciousness, they realize that this is the final stage of consciousness and they call it as Sat Chit Anand. But those who practice higher techniques of spirituality, for them, this is the first stage of consciousness after the physical level of creation. And when we say the first stage of consciousness, there are 4 more stages after this that some higher spiritual techniques can help you explore. Like we talked about the 4 divisions of creation, and then we talked about the planes of consciousness beyond the astral world of consciousness. There in that video we covered, and I'll link that video to here in the description below. In that video we covered what all planes of consciousness are beyond the astral plane that can be experienced. Now this astral plane of consciousness, it cannot be experienced with these 2 physical eyes, of course, because it is experienced only after you have crossed the physical creation consciousness, and it is experienced only within oneself, inside of oneself, and nowhere outside. There is no place in the world where you will go and there you will experience astral plane of consciousness. You have to experience it inside of you. So it cannot be experienced with the physical eyes, and it cannot be perceived with the five senses, nor it can be known by the intellect, because this is something that has to be experienced. Let me give you an example. Suppose somebody shares with you the recipe of some food, and you are in this party where your friend is sharing the recipes of different items, different food items, and she keeps sharing the different recipes. No matter how many recipes you listen to, if you do not taste the food, you will never understand the taste, the sensation, the intensity of what that food provides to your tongue, right? So similarly, the spiritual planes are something that have to be experienced. If we do not experience them, then no matter how much we keep studying them in the books, or we listen to people talking about in the YouTube videos, if we do not experience it, then it's similar to just listening to the recipes of the food without ever tasting the food itself. So how can we actually experience the astral plane? We can experience the astral plane only through the mystic transport, which means experiencing with our soul the inner spiritual regions. Now let us take one more example. Suppose you're dreaming in your sleep state, and then you wake up. Now when you wake up, you know for sure, and you don't need any confirmation for it, you know that the dream was just probably fake. It's not leading me anywhere. It's just a part of something. I was sleeping and I saw this dream and it's gone over, right? So for you, the waking state is more real than dreaming. Similarly, when a person awakens and he also starts experiencing the astral plane of consciousness, then that plane of consciousness becomes more real than the waking state. They suddenly start experiencing things that what Socrates and Plato referred to as the world more real than the physical plane. And they taught that the things of the material world are just the copies of the astral world. It's like a shadow. So my spiritual teacher, he gives an example that suppose you're standing near the window. It's early morning and you see the shadow of the sun on the window. Then that shadow reflects on another shelf of your kitchen. Okay? Then that reflects on a utensil. Now if we start calling the reflection of the sun on the utensil, if we start referring to it as sun, then it could be compared to the experience in the physical plane of consciousness. Now when we see the reflection of the sun on the window, it could be the astral plane of consciousness. And then when we really see the sun, then we actually reach the truth. So there are different planes of consciousness, and as we proceed on our spiritual journey, every stage becomes more and more real. And we start understanding how, what in Indian scriptures, we call this world as Maya. Maya means illusion. So for us, it is very real right now. But once a person starts progressing spiritually and his soul starts rising, then that person realizes that everything is actually an illusion. And that realization can come only with the experience. It cannot come otherwise. Right? So I hope that you will stay connected, and if you want to be a part of the Third Eye practical experiential program, then you're most welcome. I will leave the link in the description below. Namaste.